I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use, which is a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Tuesday, August 19. How about it? Here we are at the Bill Press Show. Welcome to the program this morning. Good to see you, and we've got lots to talk about. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, booming out to you on Free Speech TV. Thanks for joining us on Free Speech TV, and worldwide on TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. All eyes again this Tuesday on Ferguson, Missouri, where there were more protests, mostly peaceful. Last night, the National Guard was on duty, a few incidents of violence and some more arrests. But overall, things seem to be getting a little quieter out there. Meanwhile, President Obama called for restraint yesterday on the part of both protesters and the police force. He also urged the governor to use the National Guard only in a very limited fashion. And the president announced that he is sending Attorney General Eric Holder to Ferguson, Missouri, to meet with local officials and to talk about the effort, both to find out what happened, both to bring justice to that case, and also to inform the police department that they ought to maybe cool their jets a little bit. Over in Iraq, with the help of U.S. airstrike, Kurdish forces have succeeded in routing the ISIS extremists and taking back that key dam near Mosul. And the new prime minister, al-Abadi, is in the process of forming a new coalition government. In Texas, a defiant Governor Rick Perry vows to fight that indictment for abusing his executive authority. And Hillary Clinton may be on vacation, but there are 5 people who are looking at challenging her from the left in the Democratic primary. We'll tell you all about it and take your calls at 866-55-PRESS on this Tuesday edition of the Bill Press Show. Good to have you on board.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You know, sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you know, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. You know, and like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Still no peace in Ferguson, Missouri. Still no answers. Still no arrest of Officer Darren Wilson. Hello, everybody, and a great big Tuesday, August 19. How about it? So good to see you today, and thank you for joining us. We start out here. We'll be with you for the next 3 hours, bringing you up to date on all the news of the day, not just Ferguson, Missouri. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., where President Obama is back in town for a couple of days before he resumes his vacation on Martha's Vineyard. And, you know, what the hell? The old lady's out of town last night, so the president went out for dinner. Went out for dinner at Sam Cass's, the former White House chef. He's still the culinary advisor to the White House. Went out to dinner at Sam Cass's house. Sam Cass must have put on a good spread because the president was there for 5 hours. Didn't leave there until 11:30 last night, and he got there about 5:30. So, I mean, 6:30. He had a good time, I guess.
You go to dinner parties a fair amount.
I haven't been to a 5-hour dinner party.
5-hour dinner
in
party?
my entire life.
You could eat,
Since
take a nap. and
Yeah.
then wake
Yeah.
back up and have dessert.
That's right. I was going to say, I haven't been to a dinner party like that since I'd go to a dinner party, get stoned, and fall asleep.
Not that the president was doing that yesterday.
No, I'm not accusing him of that. But anyway, a good time had by all, I am sure. Sam Cass, who, of course, is married to Alex
Witt.
Witt.
Yeah.
No, not Alex
Alex.
Witt.
No.
Yes,
Good
Alex.
grief. MSNBC.
Of course.
Is it Wagner?
Wagner.
Alex Wagner. Thank
Alex
you. Not
Wagner.
Witt,
Thank
Wagner.
you. Right. Okay. Right. Close.
What were you saying about getting stoned and sleeping?
We're all off to a good start.
to the show.
We're off to a good start today. That's for sure. Yeah, how about it? Good to have you with us today, and good to have the entire team here. Peter Ogburn,
Hey.
with early case of dementia here. Alicia Murphy, hello.
Hey.
Alicia Cruz there on the phones because we want to hear from you and need to hear from you at 866-55-PRESS. That's our toll-free number. Cyprian Bolding, don't know how he does that. He was there all night with the Redskins, bringing them through last night with a big win, and he is here this morning. I know I should not name the Washington team because we don't like that name, and we vowed not to use it. Every once in a while it slips out. I'm sorry. He was there for the Washington football team last night, and he's here early this morning, keeping us looking good on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV, our worldwide video. And mostly, of course, we're coming to you on your local progressive talk radio station. And glad to be there and happy to be there with all of our great affiliates. If you don't have an affiliate near you, you can go to the TuneIn app, download it, it's free, or to iHeartRadio and catch up with us through one of our great local affiliates. Well, here we are, so much going on today. And as I mentioned, the president, with so much needing his attention, not just here in the United States, but around the world. He did come back to Washington for a couple of days, hands-on meetings. And David Letterman said, this just shows why nobody wants to run for president of the United States.
President Obama, I don't know, he had a vacation. He was up in Martha's Vineyard, and he had to go back early. See, I mean, run for president? Really?
No.
You going to run for president?
Never.
I mean, anybody lining up to run?
No, sir.
I mean, there's maybe after Hillary, maybe there's another guy, and that's it. Who honestly?
No.
He had to cut his vacation short 2 days to go back to Washington, and you know why? Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, had locked himself out of the White House.
Actually, of course, he didn't. They had lunch yesterday. But all right, big day coming up. Arthur Delaney will be joining us from the Huffington Post. And Igorians can relax today because Igor is back from vacation as well. We'll also be joined by reporters from The Hill and a legal expert to take a look at what might happen down the end of the road here in Ferguson, Missouri. And that's where we'll start. But first,
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. We'll pick up at one of the places you started, the Washington football team.
Yes.
Yes, we all know their name.
we don't want
But
to...
Phil Simms, the former Giants quarterback and the lead NFL analyst for CBS Sports, yesterday said, quote, "I would say right now I probably won't use it," referring to the name of the team. He will not be calling them the Redskins, as you mentioned. He's going to be calling them Washington or the Washington football team. He didn't say it's official that he's not going to use it at all, but he's saying, one of the quotes he said is, quote, "If it's not a big deal, why use it and offend even a few people?"
Good deal. Good.
So you see
good.
Phil Simms on TV a
Yep.
lot. Now you know when he's covering a Washington football game, he will not be saying the name of the team.
Good move. More people need to follow his example.
Sad news, Bill. Yesterday at the Smithsonian National Zoo, they announced that their red panda, Shama, had passed away yesterday. Yes, indeed. Yes, I'm sorry. This is not the red panda
No.
that escaped, by the way. Remember that red panda?
No, and this is not the black and white cute panda.
No.
that everybody
This is
comes
the
to
red
see.
panda.
This
These
is-
look more like
Yeah, right,
foxes
right.
than actual panda bears. But Shama was she was put down to sleep because she had a severe swelling of the brain associated with a parasite. Shama was 7 years old and was the mate to Rusty. Rusty was the panda that went on the lam. So, safe home, Shama the red panda. And it is that time of year for state fairs all across the country.
Yes.
And Texas is underway. And, of course, when you think Texas State Fair,
we need to send that kid down there. You know, the one unaccountably or arguably, or what was his favorite word?
Apparently.
Apparently.
Oh, the little kid. Oh,
apparently.
Yes.
Apparently.
Yes. Apparently.
Noah Ferguson.
Yes.
Niall Ferguson.
Yes, that's
Noah.
right.
Apparently.
Yes. He's not at the State Fair of Texas. He's not at the State Fair of Texas, which is where we are doing this story.
He could get a job, though, I bet.
He should get a job. And one of the things when you're talking about the State Fair of Texas, you have to talk about the food. So what are they serving at the State Fair of Texas? Well, you could get a chicken fried loaded baked potato. There's a baked potato loaded with everything and then deep fried. They also have something called fried sweet Texas. As they describe, it's a fresh pie dough filled with pecan pie, peach cobbler, and buttermilk pie, deep fried and then served with Texas's own vanilla ice cream from Bluebell. They also have, it's early. How about this? Deep fried breakfast for dinner. A flour tortilla stuffed with 8 favorite breakfast items: scrambled eggs, breakfast sausage, bacon, potatoes, ham, onion, cheddar cheese, and cinnamon roll bits. Then deep fried, served with country gravy, salsa, and pico queso dip.
There's a word in every one thing you mentioned that turns me off.
Deep fried.
Deep fried.
Yeah.
It's all deep fried in Texas, baby.
Right.
You think the barbecue would be a big deal?
Well, they have what they call a Texas taco, juicy hickory smoked Texas beef brisket.
Okay.
Double dipped in a barbecue spice buttermilk batter and then deep fried until it is robust to beef.
Right.
So you take something great like brisket and then you deep fry it.
This is why Rick Perry should never be president of the United States.
This could be like
I know
the whole nation.
He would pass a law. He would sign a law requiring everything we eat to be deep fried. Number one reason for not supporting Rick Perry for president. All right.
That's fair.
Yes, indeed. Overnight in Ferguson, more trouble, more protests. Of course, the protests will continue until some action is taken on the part of the police department against the police officer who shot Michael Brown, unarmed Michael Brown, 6 times. But overnight, there's no doubt there are some agitators there who have come in from other parts of the country, who appear late at night at these protests and turn what are basically peaceful protests into violence, throwing an occasional Molotov cocktail or throwing bottles. There were 31 arrests last night, and the National Guard and the police force did eventually use tear gas to break them up. But, it again was a case throughout the day, it seemed, but particularly last night, of the police presence being oppressive and maybe inciting violence as much as they were putting it down. Here, just one example of that, Don Lemon, who is not a troublemaker, hardly at all, reporter, anchor for CNN, who's on the scene, on the ground in Ferguson, Missouri, and CNN goes to him for a report, standing where he stood all day, and you can hear the police just harassing him and hassling him and about to arrest him.
CNN's Don Lemon is joining us now live from Ferguson. What's the mood like there, Don?
Okay. I think we're about to be arrested because we're standing on the sidewalk and you said you want to...
Move out of the way, sir. Move.
We've been standing here all day, sir.
Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Okay, so that's what's happening here. So people are here and they're standing on the... You can see what's happening.
Let's go.
We've been standing here all day. They told us to come here. I can't move. I'm not going to resist a police officer. So I'm being pushed back by the police officer. You can see this is exactly what the citizens have been dealing with.
I mean, you're going to hear this. I mean, what's going on, right? Protesters, they require that they keep moving, okay? This guy is obviously standing there with a TV crew. He's a recognizable face. He's been there all day. He's doing his job. right? I mean, this is the one thing that the police are doing, which I think is really outrageous, is they've arrested a couple of reporters. You had a couple of them on last week who've been arrested, right?
Yeah.
And this guy now, they can keep the crowd moving and let this guy stand there and do his report. But instead, no, everybody's got to move. Everybody, even you, your crew, you have got to move. It's crazy. And President Obama yesterday in his remarks, calling on restraint on the part of the protesters, but also calling for restraint on the part of the police officers. Not sure they heard him.
Yeah, look, I mean, this idea that you can't stand on a street and peacefully protest or file a report. There was some footage at the end of last week of another group from Al Jazeera where the cops showed up and forcibly dismantled their camera equipment.
Yeah.
There was a photographer from Getty Images who was arrested yesterday for just taking pictures of the police. Jake Tapper yesterday and it's all visual, so we didn't really get a chance to play it, but he stood in the middle of the protesters and the police force, and he said, you look down here about 30 yards down the way, and you see these peaceful protesters standing there, and you look here, and you see these police in riot gear with guns drawn.
And armored vehicles.
And they're back, by the way.
Yeah.
All the stuff that we talked about last week that was so scary that the police were using, they're using again last night. And when you've got this group of people assembled and you've got the cops with guns drawn, tensions are going to run a little high.
Tensions are going to run a little high. And there are still many, many questions about Ferguson, Missouri. It is not clear at all. Many parts of this are not clear. We still don't know exactly what happened between Michael Brown and that police officer. We don't know why they released that video. We don't know whether it was the right thing, I don't think it was, to call out the National Guard. We don't understand the militarization of that police force and other local police forces around the country. We don't know where all of these protesters are coming from. And clearly, some of them are troublemakers, agitators from out of town who came there only to stir up violence. No doubt about it. And as far as I'm concerned, if they can identify those people, pack them up and ship them the hell out of there. It would do us all, do everybody a great favor. But I think the number one question is a question that the mother of Michael Brown asked yesterday, and I ask you today. 866-55-PRESS. Get ready to answer. First of all, here she is at a news conference yesterday talking about the fact that she thinks that this police officer, Darren Wilson, must be held accountable.
Arresting this man and making him accountable for his actions.
Making him accountable for his actions. And then her attorney, Benjamin Crum, says, here's the question that the mother wants the answer to.
His mother wanted to ask the question that Dr. Biden nor any of the lawyers could answer. What else do we need to give them to arrest the killer of my child?
Powerful question. Dr. Biden, of course, is the doctor who performed the autopsy. What else do they need to get them to arrest the killer of my child? That's my question this morning. Why haven't any charges been filed against this police officer? Why is he still out there, free, somewhere, right? Not being held accountable at all. We do know that he shot Michael Brown 6 times in the front of his body, twice in the head, not at close range. There is no way that does not demand bringing him in, I think, putting him in custody and conducting the investigation, finding out what happened. And they haven't done that yet. This man is still on the loose, and they haven't done that investigation, and the protests will not stop until they do.
That's right. I want to see Ron Johnson, the captain there. I want to see the president. I want to see Eric Holder. I want to see the governor, Jay Nixon. Not talk so much about these protests and the protesters as much as I want to hear them say, we understand that this officer
abused his authority.
Exactly. Abused his authority. We're going to find out what happened.
And he will be held accountable. What more do they need to arrest the killer of my child? 866-55-PRESS. That's the question of the day. Your answers coming up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 26 minutes after the hour, our eyes, as the eyes of the entire nation, on Ferguson, Missouri this Tuesday. Peter?
A couple of comments on Twitter where we are tweeting at BP Show. Gene Starwin says, if Michael Brown was in a surrender posture, then this was murder, pure and simple. You do not shoot a surrendering person.
Well, a couple of witnesses have said that maybe not in the beginning, but once the cops started firing, his hands were up in the air and shots continued.
Hands up, don't shoot. Yeah,
right.
That's the big thing. Mark also says arrested. I think this officer has probably already fled the jurisdiction.
Well, we can find him.
He's been given time off.
I would hope that they know where he is.
I would hope
By
so.
the way, I don't even think he's been suspended from the force.
No, he hasn't been suspended. He's been given the time off.
With
Paid.
pay? With pay.
Paid.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What a message does that send? Alan, out in Phoenix, Arizona. Alan, thanks for joining us.
Right. My comment is like just like in the Trayvon Martin situation, on my people's side, all what is established is did he do it or did he not do it? That what led up to it never factors in. But I noticed, just like in the Trayvon Martin, what led up to the situation. And I'd like to know how many police officers just shot an unarmed white teenager statistically. I'm kind of curious.
Good question there, Alan. Yeah. No, I think there are a lot of parallels with the Trayvon Martin case. It certainly reminds us of that. And once again, we see a local police force which is just totally incompetent and unable to handle a situation like that.
This
Arthur Delaney,
is the
Huffington
Bill
Post.
Press
Next.
Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot. I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
How about it? 33 minutes after the hour now, Tuesday, August 19. It is the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, our studio on Capitol Hill, brought to you today by the Laborers International Union of North America. Good men and women of the Laborers Union under President Terry O'Sullivan, building a better America. In fact, that's their website, LIUNA, L-I-U-N-A, LIUNAbuildsamerica.org. Check it out. We thank them for their support. Continuing our conversation about events in Ferguson, Missouri, and asking that question that the mother asked yesterday, what more evidence do they need to arrest the killer of my son? Joining our conversation now, as he does every Tuesday, Arthur Delaney, editor of the HuffPost Hill and reporter for Huffington Post, of course. Arthur, you look rested. Have you been away for a week or something?
I was away for a week.
Oh.
At the beach.
The beach in Texas, obviously, where you got those Rick Perry glasses?
Rick Perry got indicted, and I saw his glasses and said, I got to get me some of those.
Has that mugshot come out yet? I mean, I haven't seen it. So
we haven't seen his mugshot yet.
You got to see that mugshot.
I think Rick Perry is going to go free this time.
You think so? Right. Yeah, okay. But Rehoboth was good?
Absolutely great.
And Thrashers?
I'm not a vinegar man. I like my French fries with ketchup. So, sorry, Thrashers.
Oh, God.
Just broke Bill's heart.
You don't know. Oh, you can really hurt a guy. I'm telling you. All right. One aspect of the Ferguson thing, which you talked about on HuffPost Hill yesterday, which I think is extremely important, and a lot of people are talking about, is when you see the scenes from Ferguson, Missouri, it looks like Baghdad. It looks like war zone. It looks like the Gaza Strip, right, with all this heavy equipment, these tanks and these armored vehicles and the assault weapons and the snipers and everything. Where's all this coming from?
The military gives their leftover gear to police departments, and Congress facilitates this arrangement. And people should know that it's not normal. It's not like this is the way it's always been. You know, police departments do not necessarily need large armored vehicles and snipers and all this other gear that is from a war zone in order to do the job of protecting and serving the public. And it's finally become controversial. My former colleague, Radley Balco, did a whole book about the militarization of police, the increased use of SWAT raids for low-level drug offenders where you're kicking people's door in and shooting smoke grenades into their houses willy-nilly. It's something that now, thanks to Ferguson, is finally getting the attention it deserves and becoming the controversy that it should be. And I think even recently Congress overwhelmingly voted to continue this. I think with the ascendant libertarian sentiment among Republicans, we will see bipartisan push to undo some of the militarization of police that's happened in the last few years.
Elisa, if you could check, the president even talked about this yesterday in a fairly, you'd have to say, moderate tone that the president used at his news conference. He was not attacking the protesters or attacking the police. He was calling for restraint on both sides. But he did point out, when you find it, just let me know, one of the issues is this militarization of the police. So we got it? Yeah, here's the president.
There is a big difference between our military and our local law enforcement, and we don't want those lines blurred. That would be contrary to our traditions. And I think that there will be some bipartisan interest in re-examining some of those programs.
Making the point that you did as well. I mean, Rand Paul has come out and said this is a problem, as well as several Democrats. But it requires, right? It requires the Congress telling the Pentagon, maybe send these things to the scrap heap. The way to get rid of them, your excess equipment, is not just to give them away to police forces around the country.
Sure, there's that, but police departments also have to want to change, and I think police officers enjoy having this gear.
Toys.
I remember
Toys.
The D.C. Police Department, I think it was more than 10 years ago, decided to switch from wearing normal trousers to BDUs, battle dress uniform pants, the cargo pants with the big pockets that soldiers wear. And, there may have been one or two people who said, well, that's weird. You're not the military here, and Washington, D.C. is not a war zone, even though there are a lot of shootings here. But most people just shrug it off. But I think there's been a slow but steady march toward police militarization that happens in a lot of ways. And gear is part of it, and tactics another, and we're seeing both in Ferguson.
One of the questions is whether or not the show of this force actually results in more violence, or it stirs up more violence rather than prevents more violence.
Well, that's not really a question. I think
you think that's a fact?
That's a fact in Ferguson. It was not police militarization that caused the shooting of the unarmed teenager Michael Brown. I mean, that is just the kind of questionable policing and racial tension that is in a lot of places. And I've been speaking to people who've been involved in these cases elsewhere. In Brooklyn, for example, where Kamani Gray was killed last year, allegedly had a gun, but people said the kid was unarmed. And his lawyer was telling me it's just a matter of time, because these cases are always happening, and it's bubbling beneath the surface, and it's no surprise that finally one has blown up into this huge story, the hugest story that it's ever been. But these shootings of unarmed black teenagers are common.
But, look, when you talk about the tensions rising, right, like any good police officer will tell you that one of the best skills to have is the art of de-escalation. Like, you want to simmer things down. You're in a heated situation, a heated conflict, or an argument. You want to sort of stabilize that and get everybody on the same page, right? Which does not seem to be a priority in Ferguson at all. On any on any level at all. Like, you want to calm things down. There was a moment that Captain Ron Johnson came on board and he talked to some of the protesters. He walked with the protesters. That was probably the best night that we've had in the last week or so. But to be walking around with tanks and guns and riot gear, like, that's not a sign that you want to de-escalate a situation.
Well, they have also, I think, probably unwisely tried to basically crap on Michael Brown by saying, well, he was a robbery suspect.
Oh, yeah. No.
He had marijuana in his system.
Now, the latest is, I forgot to mention that earlier, that he had marijuana in his system. So what?
It's so irrelevant that it takes your breath away.
And the police department itself, after releasing the video, right, admitted there was no connection. The officer who shot and killed Michael Brown had no idea that he had been involved in this little dust-up at the convenience store earlier. And, Peter, you pointed out this morning, the convenience store operator, so let's say the worst happened, that the kid stole a handful of cigarillos from this convenience store. The convenience store owner didn't even file charges.
Right.
I mean, so that video, totally irrelevant, as is the fact that he may have had, or probably, I guess he did, according to the autopsy, some marijuana in his system.
Well,
it's hardly sufficient.
It's irrelevant.
Cause.
I mean,
right.
But here's what's happening now. We have a couple report. Ryan Riley, who famously was arrested by the Ferguson police, and his arrest really brought more attention to this. And also, my colleague Amanda Turkle is there. And they're putting pictures up from last night of a line of cops in riot gear pointing their guns at people, which I don't, I am not read up on what is the best way for police to control riots. But here's what's happening. People are getting shot, apparently not by police, but there could be some kind of provocateur who is actually shooting protesters in order to make it seem like this is just mayhem and it's the police's fault.
No doubt, there's a small group of agitators or provocateurs who are there from other states who've come in just they see this an opportunity to foment some violence. Let me just interrupt you for a second because Davis has been holding here from Radford, Virginia. Want to join our conversation this morning. Hi, Davis. Hello. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Bill. I was watching Fox News last night to see what kind of a twist they were putting on this, and they had a man.
Yeah.
They had a man there in Ferguson, and he was saying that no matter how hard the police are attempting to keep the peace, there's still unrest here. So they're making the police sound like the great peacekeepers. And they were saying, but there's still agitation in the street. There's still not peace. And he said, you see the people that are marching peacefully. He said, but when the sun goes down, then the real troublemakers come out, and they're wearing masks. And then he ran really quickly over to his parking lot. He said, see those people over there? See, there's people wearing masks, and those are people who come from out of town to cause unrest.
Well, some of them may be.
Oh, that's what they said. They arrested, I think, 30 people last night, and a bunch of them were from out of town. And there was this 80-year-old Holocaust survivor who was there, for instance, who is being swept up in this sort of civil rights moment. So there are provocateurs and people from out of town down there. But it's important to remember that even if protesters, there are some who are bad apples. This is happening because of excessive force by police.
No, exactly. Absolutely. And, you can't say that you can't come out of town to protest something like this. I mean, look at the civil rights movement. That's part of the strength of the civil rights movement was people came from all over the country to the South to march in Selma, to march in Montgomery. But those people who came out of town just simply to loot or to stir up violence,
whenever
they're the ones they ought to identify and get the hell out of there.
Protests throughout history, there are people who want to make the protesters look ridiculous and frivolous, no matter what, for hundreds of years. This is just the way it goes.
Totally.
But don't. I just think people shouldn't forget that this all kicked off.
Absolutely.
When a cop killed a kid who was unarmed.
I know, and we come back to the question we started this morning, which is why. Or the question the mother asked yesterday through her attorney, what more evidence do they need to arrest the killer of my son? And until they do something about this police officer, these protests are going to continue. Arthur Delaney is here with us from Huffington Post. You're all here, and we appreciate that. Let us hear from you at 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water. Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
would you like it back?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags
Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Sign up for the HuffPost Hill. You got it every day, as we do. Read it every day.
And buy AOL stock.
While you're at it,
Man,
right?
really coming out here as a company man. I like it.
Arthur, one thing that I keep seeing about people saying that we don't really know what happened when Michael Brown meets Officer Darren Wilson, right? Or that little altercation or exchange, whatever, between the two of them. One way we would know if Darren Wilson, police officer, were wearing a body camera. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And that's one thing that some reform advocates and one lawyer I spoke to yesterday said ought to be what comes out of this, putting cameras on cops, because that will bring transparency to policing. We'd know exactly what happened and what is the argument against it other than that police don't want to be seen, don't want to have a record of what they're doing when they're doing their jobs.
Well, some people say there are some privacy issues here because you're on camera when you haven't given permission to be on camera, you, the citizen. But, the ACLU, who is there to protect all of our constitutional rights, endorses the use of these cameras. They point out it's a win-win. Because,
well,
right? You're protected, and the police are protected, both.
There was a moment where we could have had a debate on surveillance, on video surveillance, and it just kind of went by, like 15 years ago. And now there are cameras everywhere.
Yeah, good point.
And there were a few people at the time who said, once we say we're okay with these cameras, there's just going to be cameras everywhere. And people were like, whatever. You're not doing anything. What do you have to hide? And now there are cameras everywhere. So I don't think that privacy argument is going to work anymore. Just put the camera right on the cop. If there's already one on every street light in town, at every traffic intersection. So go ahead and put them where they would really be useful.
In Rialto, California, the police department there has had them for a year. At the end of their first year, they reported that the number of cases of police abuse against citizens had declined 60%, and the number of false claims filed against police officers charged with abuse, false claims, had declined 88%. So it protects you, a citizen, and it protects the police from false claims.
One way to think about it is there are stories all the time about police taking people's cameras or taking their recorder or, going after the guy who's filming. And why are they doing that? What good reason is there for that? And just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't really a good one. I mean, it's I think it ultimately helpful to everybody. If we're going to have surveillance everywhere, put it exactly where it could be helpful.
And the other thing is, there's no doubt about it. If you're on camera, you're on camera, that's going to affect your behavior.
Yeah.
You will, knowing that, you will do things differently. It's just like when you come in here every Tuesday, you know you're on camera, and so you're on your best behavior.
Part of what this whole thing has become such a conflict,
You're
right?
not as wild and as rude and as obnoxious as you are off camera.
Sure I am. I think part of the reason this thing has gotten so out of hand is that the Ferguson Police Department just didn't think they would get this amount of attention.
Right. Absolutely.
And if you're on your toes about getting attention, you will think twice before doing certain things. On the other hand, they now know they're going to get the attention. They're still pointing their guns at everybody and shooting tear gas into crowds. So maybe it's not the panacea that we'd like to imagine.
All right. Well, Arthur, welcome back. Lots more to talk about, but out of time. See you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
Arthur Delaney, Huffington Post, HuffingtonPost.com. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Igor Volsky from Think Progress coming up at the top of the next hour.
Good news for bourbon drinkers.
All right.
Bourbon production is at its highest point since the 1970s, Bill. Louisville, Kentucky, that's Louisville. Put out some numbers. They show that people are so into bourbon right now that they're having to produce more and more, about 150% more than it was producing last year. So.
That's probably because I've ordered a couple of old fashions.
See
Ever
there?
since we had that guy in with the
Right.
bourbon, I have.
That's right.
Yeah, right. So I'm 100% responsible.
Take credit for that.
I take credit for the bourbon sales.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Tuesday, August 19. How about it? Here we are at the Bill Press Show. Welcome to the program this morning. Good to see you, and we've got lots to talk about. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, booming out to you on Free Speech TV. Thanks for joining us on Free Speech TV, and worldwide on TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TawkrTV. All eyes again this Tuesday on Ferguson, Missouri, where there were more protests, mostly peaceful. Last night, the National Guard was on duty, a few incidents of violence and some more arrests. But overall, things seem to be getting a little quieter out there. Meanwhile, President Obama called for restraint yesterday on the part of both protesters and the police force. He also urged the governor to use the National Guard only in a very limited fashion. And the president announced that he is sending Attorney General Eric Holder to Ferguson, Missouri, to meet with local officials and to talk about the effort, both to find out what happened, both to bring justice to that case, and also to inform the police department that they ought to maybe cool their jets a little bit. Over in Iraq, with the help of U.S. airstrike, Kurdish forces have succeeded in routing the ISIS extremists and taking back that key dam near Mosul. And the new prime minister, al-Abadi, is in the process of forming a new coalition government. In Texas, a defiant Governor Rick Perry vows to fight that indictment for abusing his executive authority. And Hillary Clinton may be on vacation, but there are 5 people who are looking at challenging her from the left in the Democratic primary. We'll tell you all about it and take your calls at 866-55-PRESS on this Tuesday edition of the Bill Press Show. Good to have you on board.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college?
Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately I've been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
On your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
No peace in Ferguson, Missouri, and no arrest yet of police officer Darren Wilson. Why not? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bill Press Show on this Tuesday, August 19. Here we go into hour number 2. Good to have you with us today with lots to talk about. President Obama feeling so strongly about what's happening in Ferguson, Missouri. He called a little news conference yesterday at the White House to call for restraint on the part of both protesters and police officers. Also announcing some good news and maybe the tide turning in Iraq. We've got it all covered for you this morning. We'll bring you the news of the day and, most importantly, give you a chance to sound off about it at 866-55-PRESS. And you can send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. And all you Igorians across the land can relax because he is back today from a 2-week hiatus
yes.
here. I mean, nobody takes a vacation that long. except the President of the United States and Igor Volsky, managing editor of Think Progress.
And like the
Hello,
president,
Igor.
hello, I'm not wearing a tie to signal I'm still on vacation.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, that's what you're communicating with this relaxed.
But unlike the president, you did not come back for 2 days from your vacation to show that.
Well, I wish I was going back. Now, maybe it's a trend. Maybe I'll.
No. I mean,
I
no,
can.
you didn't leave your vacation to come back for 2 days to show how dedicated you are.
Oh, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, missed opportunity.
Nice to see you, Igor.
Good to see you.
Welcome back. I've joined the team here, Peter Rugbert.
Hi, Igor.
Wow, hello,
So
Peter.
long
My
since
goodness.
we've seen you.
Hardly recognized you this morning.
I know.
Look so different.
Alicia Murphy.
Hey there.
With Alicia Cruz on the phones. 866-55-PRESS, your ticket to join the conversation. And Cyprian Bolding. Do you realize that Cyprian is on the cover of this week's Sports Illustrated?
Oh, I did not realize.
This month, I guess, right? It's
true.
Yes, Sports
Really?
Illustrated on the cover. You have to look
I have
very,
to
very
look very
carefully.
closely.
In fact, I would recommend a magnifying glass.
I have very good eyesight.
But anyhow, so, it's,
I'll see if I can find him.
so treat him with special respect.
It's like Find Waldo, or what's that game? Is that what
Where's
it's like?
Waldo?
Where's Waldo? Is that what it is?
Where's
okay.
Cyprian?
Yeah, treat him with special respect on your way out today. Our videographer, Cyprian Balding. And the sad passing of a man whose name probably maybe never heard, but whose voice we all know. Don Pardo passing yesterday at the age of 96. We will know him forever for this.
It's Saturday Night Live.
There he is. What a set of pipes, huh?
Yeah.
How'd
Yeah.
you like that? You just say that. It's Saturday Night Live. 4 words, once a week.
A career is made.
$1 million.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting about? He is without a doubt had one of the most
He
recognizable
did.
voices.
He also did The Price is Right, I think.
Early on, he did The Price is Right. He did Jeopardy for a while, but he retired actually in 2006, and Saturday Night Live had him record a bunch of lines before he retired. So they had all this audio banked of him saying, "It's Saturday Night Live," and they just use it over and over again until 2013 was the first time that they didn't use his voice, and people freaked out. People freaked out and wrote, and what happened to Don Pardo? They had to sort of admit that he was retired.
Wow.
But I hope he got paid all those years.
Oh
even though-
yeah. No, they
he must have made a
took
deal
care
for
of
that
him, yeah.
too.
But I was just reading, by the way, some of the stuff that he did. So he did Price is Right. He did Jeopardy for 11 years. He performed with Frank Zappa.
Oh.
Yeah. Right?
Whoa.
Yeah. He came on and recited some lines with Frank Zappa while he was performing. He did a lot of stuff within the show, like when they had a fake game show on SNL. The game show announcer would be Don Pardo, so he was all over it.
So will Saturday Night Live now continue? Have they been using his voice this
No,
whole
they've
year?
been- now it's
they've
somebody
stopped.
else.
They've
It's
stopped.
somebody else
Okay.
now, yeah.
Right.
So.
All right. And
Don
this
Pardo.
is the Bill Press Show live.
Live
with Igor Volsky.
from Washington, D.C.
We'll get back to our conversation about the news of the day, but first,
This is the full
really
court
big
press.
stories.
Follow me on this story because we're going to Miami
God.
Lakes, Florida. No, this is a good one. This is a good one. They had a mayor by the name of Michael Pizzi. He was indicted on corruption charges. So they had a special election, and they elected a new mayor. That new mayor is goes by the name of Wayne Slayton. Wayne Slayton.
Yes.
Now, the mayor that was indicted was acquitted of those charges, and he says, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still the mayor because I was acquitted of these charges. The new elected mayor says, I was elected mayor, so I'm the mayor. Basically, Miami Lakes, Florida has two mayors right now because this guy that was indicted was acquitted. He says, I wasn't convicted of a crime, so I don't lose my job.
So the indicted mayor never resigned.
He
officially.
never resigned.
Uh-huh.
So they have
That's how
two
you-
mayors in
Was the
Miami
other guy
Lakes.
elected?
Yes.
Well, then he's the mayor.
Well, that's not what the other guy says. So
Well, I
there's
know.
this whole,
Well,
I know what you're saying. But
All right,
it's
yeah, I'm
a
president
very
of the United
public
States,
battle. He's not going quietly, I guess is what I'm getting at. A new study shows that people over the age of 65 who regularly eat fish show that they had 14% more gray matter in brain regions associated with memory, which means eating fish makes you
Smart.
Basically. It gives you better memory, helps you retain stuff. The study was done at the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and the whole idea here is it's baked or broiled fish.
I'm having fish for dinner. Baked.
Yeah. Have it baked or
It's
broiled.
baked.
If you go out and you get a filet of fish sandwich from McDonald's,
Doesn't
doesn't count.
Deep fried doesn't count.
Deep fried doesn't count. I'm sorry, baked or broiled.
I'm going to
Or
prep in
grilled.
the
I would
mornings for
imagine
fish for
grilled
this
will
show
be-
next week.
See
if I do better.
No, it seems to me if this is true over 65, then it means you should eat fish like all your life. It
Why
would
not?
be true earlier, too.
There are very few, if any, things that say that eating fish is bad for you, unless you're eating things that have, high in mercury.
What about lox and a bagel
Lox
in
and
the
bagel
morning?
Works, I guess. Sure.
Questionable health benefit there.
Cured.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
cured.
if that counts as baking or broiling.
Apropos of nothing, the most important story that I heard during my vacation was that eating salt is good for you.
Really?
Huh.
Which turns everything on its head.
Yeah.
In fact, I had just had dinner with a guy who's got a heart problem. He was telling me, yeah, but I don't need any salt. I don't need salt. And the next day I hear this story on NPR that said, the more salt you eat, not the more salt you eat, but if you really give up salt, it's bad. You have to have salt. So there you go. You never know.
You really do.
I eat everything.
Yes,
Just to be safe.
Exactly.
Sure. And if you are a Corona
That's the
Extra
answer.
beer drinker, if you drink Corona Extra, you may want to check out the production codes on the box that you bought it in, because they are recalling certain products because they contain, no big deal, shards of glass.
Whoa.
In your beer. In your Corona, you may have shards of glass in it. The recall includes 12-ounce single bottles of Corona Extra beer, along with 6, 12, and 18 packs of the 12-ounce beers. We are tweeting a link to the story that has the production codes, so that if you bought any Corona beer, you can check the production codes to see if you have any,
Our audience does drink a lot.
shards
so
of
we have to
glass
know.
floating in your beer.
Don't you think you would know it?
Need hope.
There's an easy way to find out. It's not a particularly enjoyable test, but yeah, you could find out pretty quickly.
Yeah, indeed. We got it. All right. Thank you, Peter. 14 minutes after the hour, Ferguson, Missouri is the story that dominates the news today. Yes, a little bit of news out of Iraq. The good news is they've retaken this dam at the Mosul Dam, and the ISIS forces seem to be in retreat. But in this country, everybody is focused on Ferguson, Missouri. And Igor, that's what Don't Think Progress, most of your stories are about as well. The one that intrigued me was we've heard lots of criticism of the excessive use of force and the militarization of the police department in Ferguson, Missouri, except for Fox News.
Yeah, on Fox, you haven't heard any criticism. They had a panel yesterday of 3 former police commissioners, police leaders in leadership positions, defending the militarization that you've seen, that we've seen all over the country, really, of local police police stations receiving all this equipment from Iraq and Afghanistan at very low prices, cheap prices, because, of course, the concern after 9/11 was, well, if you have some kind of terrorist attack, you have to make sure that your local police department is prepared, which makes sense. Of course, the problem is when it's used in instances like this, when it's used in a kind of leaderless, lawless situation where there's 4 or 3 different police jurisdictions, nobody really knows who's responsible, and you have a situation like you have in Ferguson. And so Fox argued that, well, actually, this is a very good thing, because you got to make sure that the police are in control, that they make sure that there's no excessive violence, that they keep everybody safe. And you know what? They said, you never know when the Islamic terrorists are going to come back to your town. So you got to be ready for this always.
Yeah. Do you think, and by the way, the people that they had on there, Bernard Carrick.
Yeah.
Disgraced
who looks very different now, by the way.
Disgraced Bernard Carrick. He's the guy that
I would
President...
too if I had his reputation.
Oh.
Yeah, with his reputation. He's the guy Rudy Giuliani convinced Bill Clinton to appoint as Director of Homeland Security or whatever the position was. No, George convinced George Bush to appoint him. And there were so many charges against him, corruption charges, in New York, that finally Bush had to say, "Oh my God," and withdrew that appointment.
Hello, Tom Ridge. We said.
Withdrew that appointment fast. So disgrace, and then Bo Dietl, who's a cartoon character.
Bo Dietl, this guy.
Yeah,
Star of Wolf of Wall Street, Bo Dietl.
in the same segment said, I don't know how Mike Brown was shot. I just don't know. When you're shooting, you're like shooting at the torso, and the bullets, the bullets just go up. I think the bullet just went up. This was him trying to explain how Mike Brown was shot in the head. The bullet just went up.
Yeah. All of this massive use of force, Bo Dito and Bernard Carrick on Fox News saying, we need more of that.
We need more of that. We need more of these kinds of weapons in local towns across America.
And then, of course, we heard the convincing news that Michael Brown got what he deserved is the police department released the video that had nothing to do with his arrest and murder. Then yesterday released the fact that there was marijuana in his system.
That
settles it, right?
That settles, we know who's to blame now. This is just the latest, as you say, the video, then the rumor that was released to the press that he had pot in his system, somehow designed to convince you that this guy was so high he either deserved what happened to him or, in some way, right, contributed to it. But what's interesting, though, is now that
all an attempt to smear this kid's reputation in order to justify what happened.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
But it's strange because we now know it's pot. Now, several days ago, there's this story floating out there that a friend of the police officer called a local radio station to tell his side of the story, the officer's side of the story, and the officer allegedly claims that Mike Brown charged at him, which is why he had to shoot him, and then the officer believed that Brown was, quote, high on something. Now, unless Brown believed that the officer was like a bag of Cheetos or something, it's hard to believe that pot would be the drug that would make you want to charge at someone in full speed, and then you'd want to, you'd have to be restrained with a gun. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And so
it's like the 1950s, 40s reefer madness. Come on, guys. We've all smoked pot. Does anybody feel aggressive and angry? Or
I mean, I'm telling you, it reminds me so much of what we heard about Rodney King. Yeah, the 6 cops beat the hell out of him, right? And you still remember that video. Yeah. And because they charged that he was high on something, and it took that many of them to restrain him and to beat the crap out of him.
All of this really undermines the notion that you hear from a lot of conservatives that say, guys, just wait a second, let's just have a full investigation and see what happens before jumping to conclusions. I mean, given the way this thing has run, it's hard to believe that there's ever going to be an investigation that everyone's going to say, this is the truth. This is what really happened.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. They'll never find that out unless they conduct the investigation.
Well, yes,
they haven't even begun to question this officer. He is still on suspended or
in some other assignment,
leave or
paid
something
leave.
Like that. Yeah, right. And the mother, I thought, I've been saying it all morning. I think the mother asked the right question yesterday. What more evidence do they need to arrest the killer of my son?
Well, they might start the indictment tomorrow in front of the grand jury. But yeah, why it's taking this long? You have 3. Now you're going to have 3 different autopsies. You're going to have 3 different layers of investigation. How much more do we need? The Attorney General is going to be there tomorrow in Ferguson, and maybe that will kind of speed things up a bit.
Igor Volsky here with us from Think Progress. Ferguson, Missouri is the target, and this is the one subject of conversation on this Tuesday, August 19. Give us a call. You join the conversation at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful?
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Niall Stanage from The Hill newspaper has an article out today about 5 politicians, 5 people from the left who might challenge Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination in 2014. He'll tell us all about it in the next half hour. Right now we're visiting with Igor Volsky from Think Progress, thinkprogress.org. Igor, you mentioned earlier, I want to come back to that, this issue of the militarization of local police departments. Even President Obama talked about that yesterday and said, there's got to be a difference between the military and local police forces. And some of this came about after 9/11. Boy, if they can attack New York, they could attack Dallas next, right? Or, for example, Missouri. So we have to arm these local police departments. But the problem is they've really become armed camps, sort of like divisions of the Pentagon.
Yeah, I mean, they're going after peaceful protesters. They're going after members of the press time and time again, arresting them. I mean, it's really a bizarre scene. And things are happening backwards, really. Before, you used to have local police trying to keep calm. And then when they couldn't handle it, you would have the National Guard come in with all their big weapons trying to, hold everybody back. Now the National Guard is there. But because the police is already so well armed, what exactly is the difference?
Well, because the police overdid it almost. You had to bring the National Guard in to bring to cool things down almost, right? And to bring a lower level of force. But my question, I guess, is do you think Congress now will do anything to reverse this militarization?
I don't think so. I mean, it was congressional action that allowed this kind of flow of weapons to begin in the first place, I think.
But you've had some people on the right and some people on the left. Rand Paul, for example, said, no, this has got to stop.
I mean, I think maybe you'll have new kind of guidelines and procedures for handling protesters moving forward across the country that are going to be adopted in some way. But it's hard to foresee Congress moving on this in unison at all, I don't think, or doing anything to quell that kind of, proliferation of weapons.
I remember the People's Park March in Berkeley, where the first time I ever saw anything like that, where the National Guard was there, thanks to Ronald Reagan, and they had their guns pointed at us. And, of course, we hippies at the time, what we did, we went up and we put flowers in the barrels of the guns. Now, today, if you tried that, you'd be dead.
Oh, boy.
No.
Don't do that.
No.
Don't try that.
I'm not recommending it. How the times have changed. Igor, welcome back.
Thank you.
Great to have you back. See you next week.
Next week.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use, which is a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
8:33 minutes after the hour, Tuesday, August 19, The Bill Press Show, live from Washington, D.C. Our nation's capital, brought to you today by the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers. You put all those together, and it's the Smart Union, smartunion.org. Smart-union.org is their website. Good men and women of the Smart Union under President Joseph Nigro giving a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. You bet. We thank them for their support. Welcome you back to the program. I have wear several hats here in Washington, D.C. One of them, very, very proud of, a once-a-week columnist for The Hill newspaper, your best source to know what's going on here in Washington, D.C., both this end of Pennsylvania Avenue and down at the White House as well. Niall Stanage is associate editor for The Hill and joins us in studio this morning. Hello, Niall. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Bill.
I guess in a way you're kind of my boss.
I don't think I would elevate myself to such illustrious levels, to be honest.
So are you that pain in the ass that edits my column?
No, I can free myself of any responsibility for that.
Oh, okay.
If you have any complaints about the way that's done, you should take it up with someone else.
Okay. Very well. Nice to see you. Good to have you on board. Thank you. I do want to get back to the topic of the day of Ferguson, Missouri. But first, you wrote a column which, not a column, but a news report that got my attention. The Clintons are on vacation out in the Hamptons these days. Hillary Clinton had a book signing. But you suggest that maybe she'll be looking over her shoulder. She may not have the Democratic field to herself next year. How so?
Well, I think that there are a number of people who could challenge Hillary Clinton. Now, whether they would challenge her with the genuine belief that they could win, that they could defeat her for the Democratic nomination, that's a different question. But people can run for the presidency for all kinds of reasons these days. And there are people...
Ask Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of people run either to raise issues or to raise their own profile or for various reasons. Now, there are some genuinely heavyweight political figures who could also challenge her. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has said so far that she won't do so. She has mostly said it in the present tense. She is not running for president, which of course depends what the meaning of the word is. But she would be someone who would be a very serious contender were she to get into the race.
Right. And there are many liberals, I'm one of them, by the way, who believe that a challenge to Hillary from the left would be good for her and good for the party.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would certainly invigorate the party. 2008 was this supposedly enormously bitter primary between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. But actually, once you got through to the general election, the Democratic base was enormously fired up and had these really animated and vibrant debates. Now, I think that if something akin to that were to repeat itself in 2016, it could be helpful to the Democratic Party. And as you don't need me to tell you, there's a very long history of candidates who are either strengthened by having a vigorous primary fight or weakened if they're just, as it were, crowned as the party nominee.
So who are some of the others?
Well, Vice President Biden is someone who might potentially run. Now, most people think it's unlikely that he would do so if Hillary enters the race. I mean, they are personally quite close, and it would seem unlikely he would risk real, possible humiliation by running against her.
Right.
But someone like Martin O'Malley, the governor of Maryland, he's someone who has telegraphed his interest in running pretty clearly. And, even as long ago as a year ago, a confidant of his told The Hill that, when he was talking about running, it wasn't premised on the idea that whether Hillary would run or not, that he, might well get into the race.
In other words, it doesn't matter to him if she does or doesn't, right? He's still...
Right.
Would go.
Exactly.
Right.
He would still consider that. Now, the degree to which he can really animate or inspire the left of the Democratic Party, I think that remains to be seen. But he could certainly go for it, for sure.
And you include on the list a man that we've talked to here on the program and talked about, who told us on the program that he is considering it if nobody else does it, is Senator Bernie Sanders.
Right, absolutely. Now, Bernie Sanders is obviously someone who really could inspire the left. He comes very proudly from that side of the spectrum in American politics. And I think that Bernie Sanders is someone who could quite sincerely run to raise issues that would not otherwise be raised if a more centrist figure like Hillary Clinton were crowned as the nominee. Things like wealth inequality, the influence of the financial sector, the influence of big money itself on politics. All of those things are things that Senator Sanders would undoubtedly raise if he ran. Again, would he enter the race thinking he was going to beat Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination? I think that's debatable, but it would certainly raise a lot of issues that would not otherwise be talked about.
Only one problem with Senator Bernie Sanders, for now, at any rate, he's not a Democrat.
Exactly, he's not. He's officially an independent.
So just a small little issue that he'd have to.
I mean, I think he's clearly perceived to be. He caucuses with the Democrats and all of that.
Yeah.
So it would be a matter of checking the appropriate boxes, so long as he didn't have an objection to doing so.
Yeah, easy enough for him to fix, but it's something he's going to have to take care of.
Exactly.
Very, very, very interesting. We'll see how that develops. Again, I think it would be healthy for both the party and for Hillary Clinton to see that challenge. I want to move on to Ferguson because you at the Hill and others of us in the field of journalism have been appalled by the treatment of some journalists. This is one aspect of Ferguson, Missouri we haven't talked about this morning. Appalled by the treatment of some journalists out there by the police department, journalists who are just trying to do their job and report on what's going on. This, I think, maybe the best example of this that I saw yesterday was Don Lemon from CNN, anchor on CNN, out there as a reporter in the field as the protest began last night, and he's just trying to do his job and report, and the police are basically ready to arrest him and throw him off if he doesn't move. Here's the way that came across on CNN yesterday.
CNN's Don Lemon is joining us now live from Ferguson. What's the mood like there, Don?
Okay. I think we're about to be arrested because we're standing on the sidewalk and you said you want to...
Move out of the way, sir. Move.
We've been standing here all day, sir.
Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Okay, so that's what's happening here. So people are here and they're standing on the... You can see what's happening.
Let's go.
We've been standing here all day. They told us to come here. I can't move. I'm not going to resist a police officer. So I'm being pushed back.
So I think we get the point there. It's I mean, what are the police thinking? I mean, they're certainly not helping their own image, right?
No.
By treating reporters this way. And a couple have even been arrested.
Absolutely. It's pretty extraordinary. And I know, people can deride journalism often, and I understand sometimes the reasons for that. But I think when you have a scenario like Ferguson, the media, for all its faults, does play a genuinely useful role in bearing witness, in holding the police and others up to scrutiny. And when that is removed, or when journalists themselves are sometimes physically removed from the scene, I think that's a terribly troubling precedent. And it's something that is really just gets to the heart of this whole issue, where the police appear to not really be thinking through their strategy or anything else. And so you get reporters getting arrested for taking photographs or for witnessing
Which
the scene.
happened yesterday, I believe.
It did. A Getty photographer, I believe, was arrested last night. So, the whole concept of arresting someone for taking photos of something, that seems to me a deeply troubling idea in any democracy, particularly one that would hold to the rights that the United States would hold up as its own kind of credo.
It sounds something like right out of Putin's media world.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have been talking about, how would this whole scenario be reported upon were this happening in a foreign country? And, a lot of American journalists, I think, would be appalled at the forces of the state treating the media in this fashion. The forces of the state in this case are American, and that's problematic, to say the least.
You are from Irish heritage, right? Mm-hmm. When you see the pictures of the military, not the military, I'm sorry, the police force in Ferguson, which for all practical purposes looks like the U.S. Army with all their heavy equipment, bring back some images to you?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in Belfast at the time that the conflict known as the Troubles was happening there. And certainly there is, I think, comparisons that can usefully be drawn. And my memories, or the resonance for me is with this hyper-militarized police. And that's not only an immediate problem in the moment for the people who are subject to that or targeted by it. It also makes normal policing, even a long way down the line, almost impossible, because normal policing depends on there being at least some basic level of trust between the population and the police. Now, when you have the police going in this ultra-militarized fashion with snipers and armoured cars and things like that, it entirely, it seems to me anyway, destroys the capacity for that trust to exist. And then you're in really a world of pain for some time afterward.
And the net effect, it seems to me, is that they're exacerbating the situation and making things worse, not better. Instead of calming things down or restoring order, they're in fact, by that excessive presence, if you will, right, of force, creating more violence.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it seems to me that a basic function of the police in circumstances like this should be to try to de-escalate the situation. What we've had, in fact, is the actions of the police serving, in my opinion at least, to escalate the situation, to intensify the kind of distrust and confrontational aspect of this whole thing. And I think that the police have really serious questions to answer here, not just about the tragic killing of Michael Brown, but about their conduct in the aftermath. Even something as basic as enforcing a curfew. I mean, I don't know. I find the productiveness or usefulness of that rather questionable. I mean, it seems to me that the police should operate to enforce laws that actually protect people or property from being assailed. Curfews are a different category to that, it seems to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. We're talking about the news of the day with Niall Stanage, associate editor for The Hill. You are welcome. We'll find a seat at the table here for you at any time. Welcome to join the conversation, and we'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
11 minutes before the top of the hour now. In the next hour, Debbie Hines, who is a trial lawyer and a legal expert, will join us in studio to talk about what legal action eventually we may see in Ferguson, Missouri. Right now we're talking about the plight of some journalists trying to cover that story out there and other aspects of Ferguson with Niall Stanage from The Hill, associate editor of The Hill. Niall, good to have you in studio again.
Thank you.
It's interesting to me that this the Ferguson situation has become such a hot point, if you will, that the President of the United States himself, now for the second time, yesterday for the second time, felt compelled to come out and speak about it. What can the president do, or what should he do in a situation like this?
You know, I think it's a really tricky situation for the president. There have obviously been, during his tenure, other very high-profile race-related incidents and cases. And sometimes, as was the case with Trayvon Martin, I think his reaction and responses and comments were generally praised. Your listeners might remember that earlier in his presidency, there was the issue of Henry Skipgates at Harvard being arrested in rather dubious circumstances. And President Obama at that point said something to the effect that the police had behaved stupidly. And there was a whole uproar about that.
I was there at that news conference when he said that and stunned everybody.
Right.
That he spoke so candidly, actually. Right.
Exactly. Now, I think that there were a lot of people who were glad that he spoke so candidly, but there were also, he got a lot of criticism for it, essentially.
Yeah. And that ended up in the beer summit.
It did, which was a rather absurd thing done for the, for the cameras, for the optics, as we say. But it was done anyway, and that sort of assuaged people's concern. So I think, for obvious reasons, when President Obama comes to address race-related controversies, he's on very delicate ground. Yesterday when he spoke, he gave me the impression that he would have just as well preferred not to be speaking about this. He didn't seem overly enthusiastic to talk about it. He devoted at least as much time to talking about the situation in Iraq as he did the situation in Ferguson. There are, to be fair to the president, genuine restrictions upon him in terms of not wishing to influence any criminal case that might emerge from these events. But, I don't know what he can say, frankly, other than to call for calm and other than to try to persuade local or state level officials not to do things that are incendiary in some fashion. That seems to me to be about the limits that one can reasonably expect him to go to.
Yeah, his body language yesterday was clearly... Ben, I hate to have to talk about this, but I feel I have to say something.
I actually felt bad for him yesterday. Like, he looked like he did not, like he wanted to be anywhere else but there having this conversation.
Yeah, he did. I thought a couple of significant points he made. Yes, he did address the situation of the militarization, which we've talked about, and said we do not want police forces to look like the military, and to have that kind of equipment. There has to be a distinction between them. And he also called for restraint, not just on the part of the protesters, but on the part of the police force. Mm-hmm. And he made it clear that he wasn't very happy about the National Guard being called in.
Right. And I thought his remarks on the National Guard were particularly conspicuous. He essentially said, well, that was nothing to do with me. That was done by the state of Missouri.
And we found out yesterday that the governor didn't even tell the White House that he had called in the National Guard.
So this was not... President Eisenhower federalizing the National Guard and making them federal forces. The president did not want, and he urged the governor to be sure that he used the National Guard in a very limited fashion.
Right,
yeah.
and I think that speaks not just to a fear or wariness of the National Guard, but also the rather strange and turbulent path that has been taken by the authorities in Missouri in response to this. Where first there's a curfew, then there's not a curfew, then it's going to be this police force, then that police force, then the National Guard. And that lack of consistency, I imagine, would not be something that the president or others would particularly like.
They have been all over the place. Niall, good to have you with us this morning. Thanks so much for coming in. Hope to see you again.
My pleasure. Hope to be here again.
All right, and we'll be back, and I will... President's got one more day in Washington before he heads back up to Martha's Vineyard tonight. We'll tell you what's on the president's agenda when we come back here on the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay. I know 2 hours, great 2 hours, but a great third hour coming up. We're going to lose you on Free Speech TV. Your alternative, stick with us on the video by going to TawkrTV, youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKRTV in the third hour. We're going to be joined by Debbie Hines, who's a trial lawyer and a legal expert, give us her take on exactly what the legal options are for the police and for the family of Michael Brown out in Ferguson, Missouri. So stay with us for hour number 3 on TawkrTV.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new. If I could have an extra 5 years to live. You said 5, right? 5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live,
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas. I don't really know. I think I'd do anything.
Why are you asking me that?
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, President Obama here again today for most of the day. By the way, he had a big dinner party last night at the home of Sam Cass, who is the former top chef at the White House, still involved at the White House, and has become a good friend of the president's. Must have been a fun dinner. He showed up at 6:30 and didn't leave until 11:30 last night.
Hey now.
Well, Michelle was out of town. They get the guys getting together, having a good dinner. The president has a daily briefing this morning. Then he and the vice president meet with the president's economic team. And this afternoon at 4 o'clock, he leaves the White House heading back up to Martha's Vineyard. Well, he will arrive just about 6 o'clock this evening. I'm not sure I'll have time for a game of golf this evening, but at least a good dinner with the first lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. Truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty,
my power,
my life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name is Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
No peace in Ferguson, Missouri, and no arrest of police officer Darren Wilson. Why the hell not? Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Bill Press Show this Tuesday, August 19. So good to see you. Hello, hello, hello. Wherever you happen to be, we welcome you to the program, whether you are listening on your local progressive talk radio station. Thanks for being there. Or watching us worldwide on our video stream at TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. The president is going to be going to Estonia, by the way, to a Baltic country. So we say good morning to all of our good friends in Estonia.
Shout
and
out.
you can watch us every day between now and the time that the president arrives to find out what's going on here in the United States and things you may want to ask him about. Wherever you happen to be, we're glad to have you with us and look forward to hearing from you. Your questions, your comments, your calls, always welcome at 866-55-PRESS. Your comments on Twitter or Facebook, welcome on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Not just me, it takes a village here. The other members of the village, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy. Hello, hello.
We're like the village people.
Yes, village idiots.
Cue the music.
That too.
The village people, right. Alicia Cruz is on the phones ready to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. A lot of calls this morning, for which we thank you. And Cyprian Bolding, our videographer, he's got us looking good, got the cameras and the lights on, looking good on TawkrTV. And man, I got to tell you, it takes a lot. You got to be strong to be a Nats fan, man.
Holy cow.
You got to be in for the long haul because every game goes into extra innings, and they don't pull it off until the very end.
The Heart Attack Nats.
Heart Attack Nats, but they've been winning. It was again last night. They went into extra innings when Adam LaRoche pulls it off, though, for the final 5-4 victory for the Nats. Here's how it sounded like on WJFK.
Here's the 3-1 to LaRoche. Swing and a long drive. Deep right field. Forget about it. Going. Gone. Goodbye. Roche has done it again. And for the third straight day, it's a game-winning walk-off for the Nationals.
Third straight day, extra innings, one run at the very end. It's just...
Walk-off.
Yeah, well,
11 innings.
11 innings last night. Yeah,
the announcer for the Washington Nationals right now.
Yeah,
like it would be so hard to conserve your energy to the very end so that you can have that last push.
but they're looking good.
Yeah, 7 games in a row,
and they're winning.
Won.
Yeah,
come on now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyhow, sorry, but we are located in Washington D.C., so we that's our team. Okay.
Deal with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Deal with it.
Body cameras for police. Is that going to be a result of what we've seen happening out in Ferguson, Missouri? We'll find out at the top of the hour here from the Civil Liberty ACLU. And a little bit later, Debbie Hines, who is a legal expert, will join us to talk about the legal implications out in Ferguson, Missouri. Right to the news of the day, but first, Peter with the big headline.
This is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. While we're talking about sports, let's go to football, where last night preseason football saw the Washington football team take on Johnny Football and the Cleveland Browns. Washington won that game 24-23, but the story is, how did Johnny Football do? He left a bad taste in the mouth of the Washington football team. In the third quarter, he threw an interception, and after catching a few choice words from the sidelines, Manziel threw up the middle finger to the Washington side. Now, the NFL will review the tape and could be an $11,000 fine.
Oh, no, really?
For Manziel.
Oh.
Not such a great showing. When
No.
this is what we're talking about the morning after your big debut.
And he was a Heisman winner, right?
Yeah, look.
Supposed to have better sportsmanship than that.
Here's the thing. He's a very good football player. People have wondered whether or not he's going to be able to make the transition to the NFL, but he is a hothead, and he has done plenty of things that have gotten him
Sounds
into
like
trouble.
they got under his skin.
Here's the thing. If he keeps acting like this and he keeps calling out
Yeah,
teams and
yeah.
doing it, he's gonna have a very short career.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the nicest way possible. And let's go to Alaska, where there is a Republican running for office. His name is Dan Sullivan. He is also running against another opponent in the primary named Dan Sullivan. Two conservatives running for the U.S. Senate nomination.
Wow.
Both running under the name Dan Sullivan. Two Republicans.
Well, it makes it easy to decide who to vote for.
That's right.
And no one took Daniel just to make it a little easier?
Someone should have just gone with Daniel S.
Yeah.
That's how they should have campaigned. That's bad news, Bill. A frost in Turkey means that the world's largest producer of hazelnuts is having a problem with hazelnuts, which means we could have a global Nutella shortage.
Oh
no.
I was just trying to think hazelnuts. What do I eat?
Nutella, the chocolate hazelnut spread that used to be hard to find. Now everybody has Nutella, but they're saying that this frost killed off a lot of the hazelnut plants. And so what's left is going to be very expensive, but there's not going to be as much as you're used to seeing.
Global warming.
That's right. We won't know the full extent of the damage for about another month or so, but it could be very bad.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Yes, indeed. A lot of stories lately about what would have happened, how things might have been differently in Ferguson, Missouri, had Officer Darren Wilson been wearing a body camera. What are these things? What are they all about? Are they good for police forces, or are there serious questions about them? We want to get some answers. We turn to Chris Rickard, who is a member of the Policy Council of the ACLU, great organization protecting all of our constitutional liberties, of which I am a proud member and have been for a long time. Hello, Chris. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, tell us, what are these... What's the purpose of these body cameras worn by police, and why are they important?
Absolutely. The purpose is to get an objective account of events. As Ferguson shows, some of these tragic shootings in particular, there are two sides at least to the story, and there's no objective account of what happened. So even if you have an excellent use of force policy in place, the police department won't be able to show that their officers acted properly without an objective account. And as you know, the ACLU is not in the habit of promoting surveillance.
Yeah.
In this case, our privacy experts looked at it and find it to be a win-win. It weeds out false complaints, but it also provides that objective account.
Now, first of all, they provide, the camera is not just a camera, it's also an audio recording device, right? So you have both audio and visual record?
That's right, and people may be more familiar with the dashboard cameras, which have been around for a little longer, but these are body-worn cameras that can be on the lapel, on an officer's glasses, on a helmet or badge, and they're very small, quite inexpensive, and have full audio recording as well.
So would you say very small, like the size of a cell phone, or smaller?
No, even smaller than that, quite unobtrusive to the point where we think officers should actually wear a button saying you're being recorded to inform the public that that's happening.
For police forces, you mentioned not that expensive. What is the average cost? Do you know?
That's right. Some of the retailers are having them from $200 to $400, up to $1,000. There are, of course, costs as well for the data retention, but that's a tiny expense compared to what you imagine is an investigation of trying to figure out what actually happened in some of these cases.
Yeah, I mean, for $200 to $400, it seems to me that's a worthwhile investment to have a record of what actually happened. So, had Officer Darren Wilson been wearing one of these body cameras in Ferguson, Missouri, how would that have changed things? How would that be different today?
Well, there's a lot of speculation, of course, and the facts aren't all in. But just to give one example, some of the reporting has said that the autopsy results are unable, of course, to say whether Michael Brown was approaching with his hands up or not. That's a key factor. The camera might well have captured that. Hundreds of police departments have rolled this out successfully. The stats are pretty clear that complaints go down and uses of force go down. So in a preventive way, that might have helped, but also to get the account for the investigation, that's the key.
Now, how new are these, and how many police departments, or do many police departments, even if you don't know the exact number in this country, have them already?
Yes, that's right. Hundreds of them are rolling them out and piloting them, and there's really such interest that you're reading every week of new police departments here and around the world doing them. The ACLU has put out a white paper a year ago saying that these are a win-win for departments and the publics they serve. We think there need to be privacy protections. Obviously, an officer's shift doesn't involve only public interactions, but we think always when a police officer is interacting with the public, they should be on and recording with careful data retention restrictions. These wouldn't be mass surveillance repository with film of everything that happens. These would be carefully preserved for investigations. If there's something to red flag, if there's a use of force, if there's detention or arrest, if there's a complaint especially, but it's not a trove of data and recording for the government.
By the way, can a police officer or can the department turn these on and off? Who controls them? The on and off switch?
That's the key. We don't think the officer should have discretion to turn them off for public encounters. Some departments have policies where it is within the officer's control, building on the dashboard camera model where when the siren or the lights go on, the camera goes on. We think that's a problem because if the camera is off in a public interaction, that creates, of course, a lack of objective account of events. So we're proposing that if the department doesn't have constant reporting, a presumption against the officer attach if the camera is off in a public interaction.
Sure. I don't think you want a police officer to be able to turn it off, right?
That's right.
It's got to always be on. But let's say, I mean, let's say he's got to go to the bathroom, right? So, what do you do in a case like that? I mean,
exactly. And if at the station house, there are private discussions, these aren't things that need to be recorded and preserved. And so it's really a matter of having a policy where it has to be on for interactions with the public, and if for some reason it's off, that can be disproved. Maybe there's a technical malfunction, but there should be a presumption that there may have been misconduct.
Mm-hmm. What in the police departments that have employed these already? What's the results have been? Any measurable changes?
Yeah, there's a remarkable study in Rialto, California, where the cameras were rolled out, and 88% reduction in complaints filed against officers, and a 60% reduction in uses of force. And the control group, which didn't have the cameras, was twice as likely to have uses of force. So that's preliminary research. There's a lot of interest in looking at these and looking at whether there's self-limitation on the officer's part. But there's no doubt, and officers in Rialto and other places are very satisfied when they start using them after some initial skepticism in some places, that they're exonerated when they're false claims of abuse.
Do you know, we're talking with Chris Rickard from the ACLU, of course it's aclu.org. Do you know, Chris, was the Ferguson Police Department, or Ferguson's a suburb of St. Louis, was it St. Louis area police, were they ever given the opportunity to use these and turned them down, or have they just not been considered there?
I've read that the Ferguson department itself was starting to adopt them, but didn't have them, obviously, in this instance. They're going out very quickly. The Department of Justice has praised them. I think there's talk in Congress of funding or requiring them. My specialty is the Border Patrol, which has had several dozen fatal shootings in the last 5 years, and they are piloting them. So there's definitely momentum in police departments and law enforcement agencies across the country.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the Border Patrol, because I mentioned it earlier in the program, that I saw a report on CBS News last night, and I had never heard before. We're rightfully very focused on Ferguson, Missouri, and the case of Michael Brown. But there have been several cases of unarmed teenagers shot and killed by Border Patrol in recent months.
Absolutely. Correct? And an insider has said that at least 7 of those shootings are questionable in his view. He's a top Border Patrol executive who used to head CBP's internal affairs. And again, that's such a good example of why cameras would have helped. their accounts. Unfortunately, when someone is deceased, of course, they can't tell their side of the story. But these Border Patrol shootings have not been investigated properly. And in one case in which the ACLU has brought suit cross-border shooting, the teenager was shot 7 times in the back. And there's just a lack of accountability that really could be served by having these cameras on the agents.
Yeah. Well, glad to see the ACLU out in front on this issue, Chris, and thank you for your time this morning to inform us on how important they are and what a difference they could have made in Ferguson, Missouri. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Chris Rickard from the ACLU. You know, I think if any good comes out of Ferguson, this is one thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't force, I guess, local police departments to do it, but they could certainly adopt a policy where the pressure is on police departments to have these or explain why the hell not. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be right back here. Your questions, your comments. Have you seen any of these police officers maybe wearing these, or are you a police officer and you do wear one? Tell us all about it. 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look! Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour, Debbie Hines, trial lawyer and legal expert, in the next half hour here of the Bill Press Show. Right now talking about the use of body cameras by police. Peter?
Yeah, I mean, after hearing that conversation with the ACLU, I don't really see any reason why this shouldn't be examined. I think you made a good point. This is obviously an ugly situation in Ferguson. We hope that it gets under control soon, but there could be some good that comes out of it.
With a lot of questions, and the number one question would be answered. I guess if he had been wearing one of these body cameras, we would know exactly what happened and whether he was seriously threatened. It's hard to believe. Let's say a quick hello to Charles out in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Charles.
Oh, how are you?
Hi.
The body cam, yes, definitely, and not to be turned off by the officer.
No, I mean, the idea that the officer could turn it off, I find a little frightening. I'm glad to hear the ACLU say that should not be the case. Right. And Charles, appreciate hearing from you. You know, Peter, I thought that one of the problems might be the cost of these cameras, but we're talking $200 to $400. I mean, hello, that's a cell phone.
How many?
Right. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. How many tanks or semi-automatic weapons do you think we could buy?
Exactly. Right.
You know?
Yeah. One less tank and a body camera for every cop in America.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
So don't tell me the cost is a problem. And again, you know, when the ACLU says there's not a privacy problem, that it's a win-win for the police and for the citizenry, then this is something I think we all could get behind. Talk about some of the legal implications, what might happen in Ferguson next with Debbie Hines.
Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, Tuesday, August 19, Washington, D.C. That's where we're coming from, our studio on Capitol Hill, The Bill Press Show, brought to you today in part by the American Federation of Teachers, the good men and women of the AFT under President Randy Weingarten. Hey, I just read she's hanging out up in the Hamptons with Hillary Clinton the other day at Hillary's book signing. Randy Weingarten, good friend, all the men and women of the AFT, the good teachers of America. We thank them for their support, and you can find out more about their good work by going to their website at aft.org. Many, many questions surrounding events in Ferguson, Missouri, and a lot of those questions dealing with what may happen legally to resolve this case. Debbie Hines is a trial lawyer and a legal expert, head of Legal Speaks, legalspeaks.com, and she joins us in studio this morning. Hi, Debbie. Nice to see you.
Hi, Bill. Good to see you.
The president yesterday announced that he is dispatching Attorney General Eric Holder to Ferguson, Missouri. He'll be out there tomorrow. This is the top legal officer of the United States of America. What can he do in this case?
Well, he's overseeing the Department of Justice, who has been on the ground there along with the FBI, trying to get interviews, trying to really piece together what happened so that they can decide whether to bring an action for civil rights violations.
So is this a federal matter, Ferguson? What happened there?
It could be with the Department of Justice. On their end, that is federal. So that's what they're pursuing, is only federal charges, not any state charges.
You know, so they could bring perhaps a civil rights, a violation of the civil rights of Michael Brown case against the officer, Darren Wilson. Is that
correct? Just very similar to what was done back in the 90s with the Rodney King beating case, where the Justice Department ultimately, after the state action failed, they brought federal charges for civil rights violations for Rodney King's beating.
Right. I've been making that because I was there and lived through the Rodney King trial and riots in Los Angeles. But I also remember, don't I, that there was talk at least of a civil rights investigation in the case of George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. Whatever happened to that?
We don't know. And that could still be going on, but we don't know.
No charges were ever filed,
No charges were ever filed. We don't know if it's still being investigated or if it's just been dropped. But we, as the public, we don't know.
Right. Okay. So if the Justice Department comes into this case, What about what happens to the local police department and their investigation? That just supersedes that, I guess?
No, it doesn't supersede. They both can. They're two separate actions because the federal action, again, is for civil rights violations, where the state action, should they bring one, is for the state crime of murder, manslaughter, whatever, second-degree murder, whatever the charges would be brought on the state level. So they can be two separate. They're actually two separate cases.
Now, we don't know all the facts. We know more since you were here. You were here last week when I was on vacation. We know more than we did last week, perhaps. We know from the autopsy that he was shot. Michael Brown was shot 6 times in the front of his body, not at close range. You're an attorney. From what you've seen, from what you've heard, do you have any doubt this is a case of excessive use of police force?
My opinion hasn't changed since last week when we didn't have all the facts, and it's only strengthened that I think it's definitely a case of excessive use of police force. It doesn't matter whether he was, shot from the back, but the fact that he was not shot at close range, there wasn't any reason or justification for the officer to shoot him because the officer would not be in fear of his life.
And that's the test, I guess?
That's the test when the suspect is fleeing. I mean, it's very rare that you are going to come out with a justifiable homicide when the person, such as Michael Brown, was unharmed. But the police are allowed to go after a fleeing suspect that is escaping, and they can shoot only if they are in fear of their life or if they're in fear of other civilians, other citizens that on the street might get injured or killed. Might get injured.
Okay, now given that, it seems to me that the most important question and the most relevant of anybody didn't come from the president or the attorney general or whatever. It came from Michael Brown's mother through her attorney, Benjamin Crump, yesterday. He was there with her, and he says this is the one question that she wants an answer to. Here he is.
His mother wanted to ask the question that Dr. Biden nor any of the lawyers could answer. What else do we need to give them to arrest the killer of my child?
What else evidence do we need?
I absolutely think that with the state case, I mean, the federal case might be a whole nother matter in terms of how involved they want to get it to make their case. But I absolutely believe that with the state case, that there is enough evidence to basically indict the officer, bring charges against him, either by way of an indictment or criminal information.
Why hasn't it happened?
I think we're seeing why it hasn't happened because Ferguson, Missouri, is playing by a whole nother set of rules.
Yeah.
They seem to think the laws are a little different than what I think the laws and the courts think the laws are.
That's the thing that
and by the way, and this is so important because these protests continue night after night after night. Well, of course they are. When this cop is just out there, suspended or whatever his status is, but
with pay.
With pay. Yeah.
With pay.
Peter, I'm sorry.
When you talk about how off base the cops in Ferguson are, it's so clear to everybody. And so for me watching this, there's a feeling of helplessness because, I mean, who's holding them accountable, right? Someone's got to step up and say, we have got to get this situation under control. You, the police force, you have got to take control of this situation. Or at least do the right thing, right? Who's overseeing them? Who can they answer to make this, to bring justice forward?
And see, that's the real complication there, Peter, because there's so many different law enforcement agencies that are involved, and there's no one person in charge. I mean, they have the St. Louis State Police that's involved with Ron Johnson. You've got the local Ferguson police. You have other county police that are involved. And so those are all separate entities. So it hasn't been any one person that's been able to, and now you have the National Guard coming in too. So there's not any one unity there to basically, help. But on your issue of helplessness, that's what the people in Ferguson are feeling. That's why this is going on. It's not just related around Michael Brown. It's just a continuing saga of what happens over and over and over again, not always in Ferguson, but in other places. So that's their helplessness that they're feeling at this point, that they're expressing by way of the peaceful protests, those that are, protesting peacefully.
Right. That's they want to see some action taken.
Exactly.
But we've got to be able to identify who's responsible. I mean, the agency with jurisdiction in Ferguson, Missouri, is the police department, correct?
Correct.
And this officer worked for the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department.
Correct.
Okay. If charges are going to be filed against him, who would do that? Is it the district attorney of Ferguson? Okay.
Yes, it would be the district attorney, I think, of, it's probably St. Louis.
Of St. Louis, okay. And we know who that person is. And what do they need to act?
Well,
I mean, is the fact that this kid, that from the autopsy, we know was shot 6 times, is that sufficient information, or do they need to? Have they even interviewed the officer?
Well, see, that's what's causing all the suspicion, because we don't know if they've interviewed the officer. And, the way these cases normally work is that it actually is the police department that is gathering the information, just like in the Justice Department level. Mm-hmm. It's the FBI. It's not the lawyers that are, they're doing it jointly, but it's really the FBI. So in the state level, it's the police that are investigating the police. And that's why in this country, it's very rare and it's very difficult to get charges brought or a conviction against a police officer, because that's who's guarding the house and that's who's putting together the investigation, along and assisting with the prosecutors in the case. But that's who's actually going out and would be investigating. So we know nothing about what they've done.
So it's really the county district attorney for St. Louis, if this is part of St. Louis County,
yes.
or whatever the county,
yes, I think
the
so.
Same county, right?
Yes.
It's that district attorney who has got to step up and say, and convene a grand jury. Is that what they would do?
They can convene a grand jury, yes.
Convene a grand jury and bring charges against the police. And it's been 10 days now. Why not? Usually, these things. I mean, they could happen. It could happen faster.
It can happen faster because they have the evidence that they can go forward with. There has been an official autopsy done, which is not the one that we know about because they have released the official autopsy report that was done on Michael Brown. But they have the autopsy report. They have the witnesses. They have video. Setting aside from the person that was with Michael Brown, they have, the very eloquent person, I think her name is Pia J. Crenshaw, who took video, was on her way to work. Mm-hmm. I mean, her account is dead on with the autopsy report. And I'm sure there are other persons that are out there. There are other people that were on Twitter at the same time that the shooting was occurring, and they were in real time tweeting what was happening. So there really is enough. And let me just say this, in terms of the competing or conflicting reports, there's nothing different about that. That happens in every case. If there is a fender-bender automobile accident and you ask witnesses what happened, they're going to have different viewpoints of who they thought was at fault and what happened, and even though they've seen the same thing. So the fact that there may be conflicting reports by some of the witnesses, that does not diminish the case. That is in every single case that I've ever been involved in. That's why there's always two sides.
Right. What more do they need to arrest the killer of my son, asks the mother of Michael Brown. We're talking about the situation in Ferguson, Missouri, and the legal implications with trial lawyer Debbie Hines. Join our conversation anytime. We'll be right back at 866-55-PRESS. And you can reach Debbie and follow her good work at legalspeaks.com. One word, legalspeaks.com. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest. Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
11 minutes before the top of the hour, legal expert and trial lawyer Debbie Hines here with us. We're talking the law and Ferguson, Missouri. It may sound like a contradiction in terms when you think about it. The police released a video that shows that Michael Brown, it looks like, if you from the video, was involved in a robbery at a convenience store just before he was shot and killed. Should they release that video? And what does it have to do with this case?
Definitely, they should not have released a video, and I think that they were told by some officials to not release the video. But of course, Ferguson is working on a different set of rules, and so they released the video. It really has nothing to do with the case because the officer initially stopped them not because he thought that they were the suspects of a robbery. He stopped them because they were jaywalking or walking in the street. And back to the term robbery, I just want to get this out for your viewers. The only reason why legally it's being called a robbery is because Michael Brown pushed the store clerk on the way out. Otherwise, it would be charged as a theft under, a misdemeanor theft because it was $50. It's just the pushing of the store clerk that bumps it up technically to the term of with force.
Why did they release the video?
I think they released a video to assassinate the character of Michael Brown. I mean, instead of trying to bring charges against the person who assassinated Michael Brown, they're just trying to assassinate Michael Brown's character. That is the sole reason that they brought the video and they displayed the video for everyone to see.
That's the only reason that they would have released it. I mean, we even found out that the store owner didn't press any charges against Michael Brown. So why else release this video other than to say, like, look at this thug who, was a problem. That's the only reason they would have released that.
And to try to create the image for the potential grand jurors who will hear the case to devalue the life of Michael Brown, to basically get out there in a very subtle way that, well, his life wasn't really worth much. Look at him. We're getting rid of someone who's out here robbing stores.
But he not only robbed a store, he had pot in his system, according to one rumor, right? Here we go again. Same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. To what extent does what we see in Ferguson still take place around the country in terms of racial profiling? We talked about it a lot at one time, but it's still a fact, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I wrote an article on that Ferguson is everywhere in America for African Americans. I mean, we're focusing on Ferguson at this point in time, but then, we focused in on 2 weeks ago on New York with Eric Gardner, with the stop and frisk laws that go on there. Last year with Sanford, Florida, with Trayvon Martin, a few years back with L.A., and now still L.A. again, but with Oscar Grant. I mean, all of this is just a byproduct of what happens racially in this country. And that's the conversation that we need to have so that we can change what happens in this country with African Americans.
And we have to have a conversation, too, about the militarization of our police departments.
Oh, Lord. Why we are using military equipment and military tanks on our own citizens is just ridiculous. And the grants that were given, because they were grants that were given to different municipalities, it was to fight if there was ever any acts of terrorism, so that they would be prepared, because a lot of these locations and areas, they're just not big cities. They're not going to be prepared in case something happens. And now Ferguson is using it against its own citizens.
No, and not just Ferguson, right? And this is what's happened with the police department.
This is what the police department. So
they got all this gear to be able to use to fight Al-Qaeda, right?
Right.
So Al-Qaeda doesn't show up, so instead they turn it around and they use it against their own citizens.
Right. They're like, oh, we have it here. Why don't we just use it? And it's not the first time, because if you remember back in Seattle with the IMF demonstrations, that's where it was being used. As that ex-police chief was trying to explain to the Ferguson police why you don't want to do that. That just, excites everything.
Debbie, that's why we need people like you on the front lines fighting the good fight.
Thank you
for doing that, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Again, it's legalspeaks.com, and I'll be back with a quick parting shot.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, a quick footnote to where we began this hour. You know, we'll never really know what happened maybe between police officer Darren Wilson and Michael Brown, but because Officer Wilson was not wearing a body camera. These cameras, no bigger than a pager, have become standard gear in more and more police departments. They capture audio and video of every encounter a police officer has while on duty, thereby protecting citizens from police violence and protecting police officers from false claims of abuse. Well, now police departments nationwide are going to be asking what they can do in their jurisdiction to prevent tragedies like Ferguson, Missouri. The first thing they ought to do is to equip every single police officer with a body camera that they cannot turn off. My parting shot for today, folks. Have a great Tuesday. Come back and see us again tomorrow morning on Wednesday. We'll
This is
see
the
you then.
Bill Press Show.